Hi, here we are, week 3. We're going to be looking into appropriation. It's 2020, so I'm sure a lot of you know about cultural appropriation, which is on the very extreme end of the appropriation spectrum. We're going to be looking at it from a visual literacy perspective. And I would say that things to keep in mind when thinking about appropriation from a visual literacy perspective are the fine lines between, you know, plagiarism and theft and art and what's new. And it's important to look at power dynamics, who's appropriating from what are they benefiting from, who's not benefiting. And there's a lot of questions and a lot of fine lines to think about. I think appropriation in art has its own merits, and there's a lot of beautiful work that has been made and continues to be made, but I think it's important to be critical of these very fine lines. So, at its very basic level, appropriation is a practice of creating new work by taking pre existing images from another source, art history books, advertisements, the media, and transforming or combining it with new ones to make something new. Andy Warhol was famous for this, taking the chicken noodle soup can, just like an everyday food that he loved, and silk screening it and putting it in a gallery. It became very famous. He also did this with Coca-Cola. He did this with, famous people. He loved Marilyn Monroe. His Elvis Presley image appropriation sold for $83 million in 2014. I'm not sure who made all that money, but that's a lot of money. Other pop art people who have appropriated images are like Roy Lichtenstein, taking panels from an old comic and painting it and in a large scale format, but really, like, this is straight up, this is what I mean by the fine line. Yes, he appropriated this image, but what did he change? He changed the colors, and basically it looks almost exactly the same. And he continues to get a lot of criticism from comic book artists who feel like, one, he never credited the artist he appropriated the images from, and two, he never paid any of them for it. But also, it's art and it's a free world, so these fine lines. Jeff Koons, he did similar work, as similar style as Andy Warhol, and that taking an everyday image and or item and recreating it. So for Jeff Koons, he recreated a small balloon party dog and turned it into a big metallic dog, and it sold for $58.4 million, and he was the first living artist to see that much money for one of his pieces of work. It's like a cool idea, but he didn't even come up with like the structure of the balloon dog. He just imagined it as like a big thing. I was a kid and I imagined making giant hamburgers, but I couldn't because I didn't have the resources to do it. So the questions about resource and access is something to also keep in mind. Walker Evans did the same thing, took this photograph. He was sent out by some like farm administration to document what was happening during the Great Depression. Took this photo of Allie Mae Burroughs, and it became the face that represented poverty, misery, the drought, and depression in the mid 1930s in America. So obviously, this woman whose face is representing poverty, taken by this photographer, and she never got paid for her image to be out there. She never got a copy of the photograph. She never got a copy of the book. And now the image is valued at $125,000. So something to think about. Sherry Levine, I like this form of appropriation because it's interesting. She wanted to challenge the notion that while Evans may have been the photographer, he did not own the image of Allie Mae. And basically, Sherry appropriated Evans's work, who was appropriating, someone else's life, basically. So I think that's interesting. She rephotographed this image from an exhibition catalog. Richard Prince loved to reappropriate photographs, except that he didn't really change that much in the photographs that he appropriated. And later in life, recently, I mean, he's been doing this since like the 80s, 90s, but recently he took Instagram photos of strangers, blew them up, and put them in a gallery, and they were selling for $90,000. There were huge lawsuits around this because, he took these images without people's permission. And is this art? I mean, I think it's kind of cool art to blow up an Instagram photograph and put it in a gallery, but there are other ways of doing that. Maybe he could have consulted the people whose images he was taking. Maybe he could have given them a cut of that money. $90,000 is a lot for art that isn't even yours. I think there's a lot of different ways that he could have gone about this. Marcel Duchamp, this is interesting. This is, so appropriation has been happening for over 100 years. What Marcel Duchamp did was he took a urinal, turned it over on its side, signed it, and called it the fountain. And people were literally pissed off, no pun intended. I think shortly after the exhibition, the urinal got thrown out in the garbage. But it's a really interesting form of appropriation. And what he was trying to do, he was quoted as saying that he wanted to bring attention to the fact that art is a mirage. And he was like showing the fine blending boundaries between art and real life and art and everyday objects. And it really changed the way that people made art and looked at art and questioned art. This person sums it up by saying that Duchamp's message was art is something that you piss on. Hannah Hawk was an artist in Germany in the early 1900s, and she was a pioneer of the photo montage and the art of protest. So she used a kitchen knife to cut newspaper magazine images and paste as collage. And what's really interesting about her work is that she was taking photographs and photographs from the media and real photographs and deconstructing them and putting them back together with a new message and a new meaning. So all these images that she took were mostly, created in a society that was still heavily run by men, and whose voice and whose, a society where men were the ones with the most voices and the loudest voices. So her work was all about female empowerment and showing women as strong, as androgynous, as energetic, and as equal to men. And that's she was one of the pioneers of the photo montage, which leads me to Mickalene Thomas, who, I don't know if you got to see that exhibition at the AGO about a year and a half ago. I got to see her work, beautiful large scale painting collage, works. She draws from art history, from like paintings, like Renaissance paintings, to pop culture like Andy Warhol, and examines ideas around femininity, beauty, race, sexuality, and gender, and really is trying to make space for the visuals and the imagery of Black women in contemporary art. I'm just going to pull up, if you have a chance, I encourage you to visit her website. It's amazing. And I just wanted to show you a short video of her talking about her work.
Hi, this is Mickalene. And I'm in my studio. To see yourself and for others to see you is a form of validation. And I'm interested in that very mysterious and mystical line that is how we relate to each other in the world. Taking on these women as these very glamorous, assured, sexy subjects, I think it all goes back to my mother. You know what I mean? It was just her charisma. Just, I really started thinking about women like her. And I wanted to celebrate Black femininity and that sexuality in a different way by claiming the space that seemed to be voided for a while as these iconic images. And started thinking about art history and looking at iconic paintings, the Ingres painting, Odalisque, and Manet's, the Olympia, all of these paintings that we held up as very important images that have changed the world of how we see women at that particular time and beauty. And some were controversial, but they shifted things. And I thought, why isn't the image of a Black woman held up to that same light?
So I think this work is really taking appropriation to another level. Um, yeah, these pieces were real large scale on wooden panels. They had rhinestones. They were just like a beautiful like mix of paintings and collage. She would use African patterns and recreate them in her paintings, collage style. Um, this is a section of an image uh, that was inspired by Manet, which was a controversial painting at the time because it showed two women who were naked and two queer men. And basically, Michelin appropriated this image and made it her own. And she made it using, her three of her friends. She like painted three of her friends. So you can see that the position, you know, the way they're sitting is very similar. She does it in her own style. Like you can see trees back here. Here, there looks like the suggestion of trees. I just think it's a really interesting and next level style of art appropriation. Let's look at it one more time.